Hi, and welcome to Forged by Geeks. Today we're going to be reviewing a game that's going up on Kickstarter in early November. As a matter of fact, this video will be going up on our site right as the game hits Kickstarter. This is called Hunting Sasquatch. You can see the box art right there. This is still an early prototype copy, so some of the stuff you'll be seeing during this how to play doesn't have art on it, but we've tried to throw out some good examples of the art, and then other pieces aren't necessarily final art like some of these tokens yet. So just bear that in mind. It's still a little bit of a work in progress, but the core mechanics are really solid, and we wanted to explain a little bit more about how to play the game. So, if you've ever played a game like Elder Signs, this has a very similar feel, but as opposed to being cooperative, this is definitely more competitive.
Yeah, and honestly, I find it a lot lighter to play than Elder Sign. It's a lot less stressful because there's no worry about coordination or anything. So, and honestly, the competitive aspects are, I tried to figure out how to explain it, but fundamentally, I don't like competitive games all that much, and I don't feel that bad about playing this game. So that's actually a huge point in its favor.
Are you sure that's not just because you keep winning? Okay, well,
just get good.
Yeah, with dice rolling me. Okay, so getting on, this is our how to play video. We'll also have a session video or two up online and a review video. So this we want to just walk you through the general mechanics and maybe play a quick hand or two to show you how the game plays out. So the core things you need to know is you have these location cards. The location cards are what you're trying to complete as far as an objective perspective. When you roll the dice, and we'll get into that in a moment, you have to fill out the objective cards. The important thing to note is after you roll a dice, you always have to fill out the death section of the board first. If you happen to complete the death section of a board, your hunter dies. After you have put dice...
Exactly named.
Yes. After you have put down sufficient dice in the death section, you can start piling them into the completion section, the victory section. So here, if you manage to complete all of them, you acquire the card, the location, and you acquire the victory points. In addition, you get whatever symbol is here, and you get to acquire that. In this case, you would acquire the grainy photograph of the Sasquatch. Once you have acquired all 6 of them, you don't necessarily win, funny enough, but that's kind of the long-term goal. So, each player, when they start out the game, draws one of the hunters. There's an absolutely huge deck of these hunters. Now, not all of them are unique, but a lot of them are, and they're actually pretty funnily named. I don't think that's really a word, but hey, I'll run with it.
And you don't really want to get attached to whoever you draw.
Oh, no, definitely not. One important thing to remember is not quite as bad as Kingdom Death Monster, which we play a lot, but you're going to die a lot. And as a matter of fact, one of the ways the game end condition is reached is based on the number of players. Once enough hunters die, you lose. Or you don't lose. The game ends. So in the case of 2 players, which we did in one of our sessions on Twitch, and
we played it totally wrong.
Oh, yes. Well, not totally. We had one little issue. But once we lost 6 hunters, the game was over. So...
And I won.
Twice. 3 times, maybe. Did we go best out of 5 and I kept losing? But either way, so your goal is to fill out the victory cards. Now, the hunters all have little special abilities. They're not hugely impactful, but they can help. Very similar, once again, to Elder Sign. So once per turn, you may flip, for example, if you play the FBI agents, once per turn, let's say you rolled the photography, the camera. You can flip it over to the magnifying glass and then use that to place elsewhere. That can either save you from a death condition or it can be used to work towards the victory condition. Now, in addition, you want to acquire the cards for the victory points. You want to acquire these. Each of these counts as 2 victory points, but you can't have duplicates. And you want to try to stop the other person from getting them. So now we'll get into a little bit about how to play. So now we're back. So we've done a little bit of setup for this, and what you'll see here is I've selected, normally you draw randomly, but for purposes of how to play, I've selected the big game hunters, and Nicole has selected the magicians, it looks like?
Yeah, I like them.
Okay, yes, well, they're very nice. So how you start out the game is you each draw a random hunter. Then you have your location deck and you have your hunter deck for as you progress. Now, whoever's the first player, which they have a way of determining the manual, for our sake, we just usually do rock, paper, scissors.
Yep.
But for this, I'm going to say that I'm the first player. What you have to do as the first player now is flip over a location. Now, the number of location piles you can have will vary based on the number of players, but for, once again, the purpose of our game, we're going to be playing 2-player, which only gives you 2 piles. So I would start by flipping over a location. Now, this location, first thing we need to look at is the Doomed Hunter area. The Doomed Hunter area here is red.
You're dead.
Yes. Now, since my bottom area is red as well, I die, because I ran into a location that would be doomed for my character. Now, if Nicole had flipped over this location, she's dark gray, which would not have killed her. Now, once again, this is prototyped art, and they're actually working on fixing the colorblind aspect of this, so if you're seeing that, don't worry about it. It'll be fixed by the time the game's released. We've been going back and forth with them, and it's been great. They're highly responsive. So, now we're going to reverse order and say that you actually drew that card. So now, what would you do as your next activity?
I would roll my dice.
Okay, so now as part of rolling dice, there is technically the 8 dice that you see available in the game. As a player, you don't have to roll all the dice. We haven't seen much of a reason not to yet.
Yeah.
But you get the 8 dice. But you also get a couple other things. So in Nicole's case as a magician, she gets to draw 2 of these light bulb icons. So what these allow her to do is...
I forgot.
You forgot.
I forgot. I totally forgot.
You forgot?
Yes.
Wild card token. Use this token to flip any hunter dice.
Okay, that's what it does.
So as part of things, you can use these tokens and spend 1 to flip any die to any other side. Those are very rare.
Yeah,
but that's
and they're really useful.
Yeah, but that's one of the things you can do. So why don't you give it a go? So now, once again, we have the death track here. She has a Sasquatch foot and a death head.
I have a Sasquatch foot, but I do not have a death head. So that's good for me.
So as a result, she doesn't die. So now she's filled out the death section, so now she tries to fill out the victory.
So I only have 1 camera, and the rest of them don't work.
Okay, so that leaves her with 6 dice. Next, you have this fate dice here. This has a 50% chance of a horseshoe and a 50% chance of a trap. You as a player now have to choose. Do you just accept the trap condition by default, which will give you usually one of these anti-pieces, which we'll explain in a moment, and sometimes we'll also give you one of the golden horseshoes, which allows you to avoid rolling this dice and just pick the horseshoe by default. Or do you attempt to re-roll the 6 dice and maybe kill yourself? So for the purposes of this, let's have you roll the 6 dice. Will you roll as bad as I do? No, you did not.
I win.
You win. Okay, so here she'd fill this out, and since she completed all 3, she would acquire this card, which would give her 4 victory points, and she would also acquire the grainy photograph, which is an additional 2 victory points. Once she either has all 6 of these, or, oh, you can't see them. Once she either has, I can move those down. There we go. Once she has all 6 of them, or we have lost 6 hunters for a 2-player game, the game would end, and then we would total up victory points. So now let's say you didn't complete that, just for the sake of argument.
Also, one other thing that we didn't quite cover is because I had these 2 tokens, like, I could have, on my first roll, just used these tokens and turned them to the things I needed.
Yeah, you could have just won using those.
Yeah.
Now, let's back off a second here. Let's put out this foot, and let's say you had rolled a skull. But, let's say you had one of these anti-skull tokens. What happens is, as a player, all these tokens you have will eat dice. Whether you want them to or not, they'll eat the dice first. So in this case, if she had rolled 1 skull and that would have killed her, she could have taken the die, put it on the anti-skull, it would have eaten the die and saved her. But let's say instead of an anti-skull, she had an anti-photography. And she had, let's even say she hit this, and she had 1 more photography left. It would still eat that photography and stop her from having her victory condition. So the anti-tokens can both be positive or negative based on the location you're going after. So normally you would acquire that and you'd have points. So that's pretty much how a normal basic hand goes. Now, a couple other things you need to be aware of with this game is, let's say she failed to complete this. Now, on my turn, I could choose to either attack this, except for it would kill me since I'm red.
Go ahead. Just do that.
Yeah, really.
I think it's a great idea.
Or I would flip the next location. Now, the next location has a dark gray, so funny enough, that would have killed her. So once we have the maximum number of locations out, for 2 players, it's 2 locations, and it increases based on the number of players. If you choose to keep drawing locations because you don't want to tackle either of these, when you draw a location, you have to even out the piles. So the next location, whoever drew it could choose to put it on one of the piles. After another one's drawn, it can't go on that pile, it'd have to go on the other one. Once they're equal again, the next one, then you could choose which pile to put it on. And you keep building up the piles until such time as people start working them down.
Mm-hmm.
But now, let's say we had 3 in this pile and 2 in this pile. Let's say one of us completed this one. The next 2 locations would have to fill out that if you kept drawing. So that's pretty much how you draw the locations and how you complete a turn order. Now, at the end of the game, how you end up calculating victory points is pretty simple. So what you do is you take out each of the cards. Let's say you collected all of these on your side, and I collected all of these. The hunters don't actually play a direct role in victory points. Now, I would have probably gotten these 3 in that case, so I would have a cassette tape recording, a tuft of hair, and some excrement. You would have also acquired the excrement, a tuft of hair, and you would have a grainy photograph. So each of us in this case would have 3 of those symbols. Those are each worth 2 victory points, so I would have 6 victory points, and you would have 6 off of those.
Did you plan this? Because we were tied.
No, I didn't plan that.
I'm fairly sure we're tied.
Okay, so you had this one as well. Now, actually, that works out well. So she had 2 with the grainy photograph. She would still only get 1 grainy photograph token. You don't get the extra one in that case.
Yeah, they're unique.
Yeah, so in this case, your total victory points would have been 19 plus the 6, so you'd have 25, whereas I'm just 13 plus the 6, so I'd have 19, so she'd win the game. In the case of a tie, all of you equally hunted down the Sasquatch, whoever tied, and you both are considered winners, or 3 or 4, or whoever many are tied. So that's pretty much the basics of the game. If you would like to see more like a complete session playthrough, we have one up there with 3 players. We highly recommend you check it out, and I'd highly recommend you check out this game.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.